Hello and welcome to another video on the Maestro workflow engine by Nextide. This is our second video where we'll be looking at one of the Maestro AI Task example flows that comes with the Maestro AI Task module, namely the Maestro AI Expense Receipt Complex Example Flow. Links provided in the description below for our introduction video on the Maestro AI Task module, Simple AI Example Flow video, as well as where you can get the entire Maestro workflow engine for free, including documentation. You can visit our website for blog posts and to get in contact with us for any Maestro or Drupal related assistance you may need. In our last video, we looked at a simple receipt checking workflow automated with Maestro. The link is in the description. It's highly recommended you look at that simple example and its video before delving into this complex version that we're going through in this video. The example we're looking at today is identical in its concept to the simple receipt checking flow in our last video. Here's the workflow we're automating in a flowchart. First, we submit an expense report. We let AI validate it. Loop through this area until such time that the expense report looks valid. If AI deems it valid, we let a human do a final financial approval, and where we finally end the process. Where this differs from the simple example in the last video is the simple form as shown here only has a single receipt upload and description field. Now in our complex example, the expense form allows for multiple receipts as shown here. We have multiple ability for multiple receipt images and descriptions, and ultimately rejection reasons for each and every one of these. The more complex form means we need to offload each and every receipt and receipt description to AI to review. This is where the power of AI and Maestro starts to take shape, offloading repetitive yet important tasks to Maestro AI and let your personnel handle meaningful business tasks. Let's take a look at how this complex form was put together. This complex form example looks similar in terms of the date field and the expense total field here, and the ability to upload your receipts. However, there are differences. We have a hidden field, which we use as a flag on the form called has receipt issues. We use this hidden field with web forms out-of-the-box capability to conditionally show or hide fields based on other fields being filled in or not. We'll show how this works in the demo. We also have encapsulated the receipt upload description rejection message into a web form custom composite field. Again, this is out-of-the-box web form functionality. So let's take a look at our custom composite field. So here's the setup of the composite field. First, we have an image file upload field with a machine name of receipt image. Next, we have a receipt description field with a machine name of receipt description. And finally, we have a finance feedback field with a rejection reason machine name. We use some custom properties to, first of all, make it disabled. This allows end users to not be able to fill it in. And the states is how we set the visibility of the field. The field will only be visible when the has receipt issues field is filled, meaning that when the has receipt issues field is blank, this rejection reason field will not appear. So going back to the left side here, we can see the has receipt issues hidden field. And it is used to trigger this field to become visible or not. And again, this is all out-of-the-box functionality with web form. I've not written any code here. Let's take a look at the handlers. And just like the simple flow, we have configured the web form to spawn a Maestro workflow template on submission. And as you see here, we have the Maestro template of the complex example flow. We have a success and failure message. Now, let's take a look at the complex example Maestro workflow. Here's our templates. In our last video, we looked at the simple example. And again, as I mentioned in our simple example flow, this is just a demo and not a full-blown expense tracking system. So let's take a look at the complex example. And here it is. Now let's compare this complex example to our simple one. Slight difference. But don't worry, the basic premise is identical to that of the simple flow. Let me break it down for you. First, let's look at the process variables. Number of receipts. This variable is used as the count of number of web form composite receipt fields we've submitted. For example, if we upload 2 receipt images and optionally their explanations, we have 2 receipts uploaded. This variable will hold that number. Current receipt and current receipt explanation are variables that will hold the current receipt image and the current receipt description that we're sending to AI to analyze for validity. The message variable is the response from AI. A dash is the default value corresponding to the no error condition that you'll see set in our workflow. Finally, down here we have the receipts have issues. This variable is what we use as a 1 or 0 flag, where 0 denotes no issues with receipts and 1 denotes an issue with one or more of our receipts. So now let's go back to our template and look at the template's flow. Just like the simple flow, we have an inner AI checking loop that I'm looping over right here, and we have an outer human related finance loop. The major difference is obviously the innards of the AI checking loop. But if we step back and look at what types of tasks exist in this template, we see that out of the 20 tasks shown here, 2 of them are the start and end. 2 are human executable. 1 is the AI task. We have 2 batch functions. We have 4 if tasks, 1 here, 2, 3, and 4. We have 7 set process variable tasks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And we have 2 logical ANDing tasks. So for the most part, the Maestro engine is executing this entire workflow with the exception of the human interactive tasks, which, identical to that of the simple flow, has the human finance check and the initiator of the workflow having a task to edit or refine their expense report. And here again, I'll note that you should really watch the simple expense report flow example video. It will help clarify some Maestro jargon and concepts that we use in this video. Some of the concepts used in this workflow, mainly in this area here, could have been consolidated into a single batch function step. I've chosen to break out those steps to show you how you can build a very low code workflow. Now, let's take a look at this inner AI loop. What this inner loop does is loop over each receipt composite field from the web form. Let's take a quick peek. So each one of these fields that you might have uploaded. So what we do is we first, over here, set a process variable to the number of uploaded receipts. Let's take a quick look. We set this process variable to the number of receipts that have been uploaded. This is in fact the number of composite fields created. In this if task, we then check to see if the number of receipts is greater than 0. If we are greater than 0, we enter into the inner AI loop. If we are 0 or less for the number of receipts, we exit the loop in this direction. So, if for some reason the user did not upload a composite field set, the field count is 0 here, and thus this if will be 0, and it'll keep us from going into the AI task loop. Essentially what we're doing here is looping through each uploaded composite receipt field, and when we've analyzed them all, we continue out in this direction here. So let's go back to the inner loop. What we do here is to clear any AI response we may have stored in our process variable, same as we do in the simple example, we set it to a dash. And this one here, in this task, the -1 off of the number of receipts uploaded. This accomplishes 2 things. It shows how we create a counting loop in Maestro. Remember, this if task up here checks if the number of receipts uploaded is greater than 0. By subtracting 1, we get 1 closer to 0, and thus 1 iteration closer to exit this loop. We -1 off the number of receipts process variable, and we use that value as the index of which composite field we're looking at. For non-programmers, just think of counting the composite receipt fields uploaded starting at 0 The second composite receipt field is 1, the third is 2, and so on. For the programmers in the audience, we use this numeric field to isolate the field's index in the saved data, which starts at 0 and goes up from there. Looking at these, we have two set process variable tasks. First, we set the process variable to the current receipt explanation, and this one, we set a process variable to the uploaded receipt image. Let's take a look at this one. So here's how this works. We're looking at the set current receipt explanation set process variable task. We use the new set by process variable helper plugin option. The option we've chosen is to use the get a multi-value fields value using entity identifier and process variable helper plugin. What this does is provides us with a really simple to use UI to set values from an entity, node or web form as shown here. And for our case, it's our web form submission, and the delta value or its index from a process variable, in this particular one here, and specify the field and even the subproperty in the case of a web form composite field here. So we're looking at the receipt upload. If we recall back here, here's our receipt upload field. And we're looking in the receipt upload field for the receipt description, which again, when we look here, is this composite field here. And that is how we have set this set process variable task up. Similarly, we set the current receipt file, and let me edit this one. Here we're setting the current receipt process variable to the value stored in the receipt image field as shown here. We logically then AND all these tasks together, which just waits for all of these tasks to complete before continuing. And finally, we get to the AI task. So this task is largely identical to what we did in the simple flow. We use chat with image vision, operation type. We provide the source image from a process variable, which was our current receipt. And our prompt, which is identical to that of the simple flow. This prompt will produce an AI message that will flag any receipt as having alcohol on it or flag the receipt as invalid, and a dash to signify that there is nothing wrong. And again, we use a token to inject a process variable's value, namely the receipt explanation, dynamically into the prompt. We set the output of the AI task to a process variable called message, as shown here. This if task detects if the message process variable is blank or not. In our case, a dash is blank. So if there is a problem, in other words, it's not a dash, we go in this direction. We set a process variable here. Let's take a look at it, which sets the receipts have issues process variable flag to 1. And this batch function is used to set the rejection reason back into our web form. This is a little bit of custom code that again you'll see in the module itself. The code is freely available to you to look at in the Maestro AI Task Vision Examples module. We then AND these two together, and we go back up here to the if. This if checks the number of receipts is greater than 0. If it is, we will branch back down in this direction. If not, we go this direction here. If the number of receipts is greater than 0, and we do go down in this direction, again, we will clear the AI response. We will -1 off the number of receipts. So if we had 2, we went through one iteration, we're down to 1, and then we come back through here, we go down to 0, and again, when we check the if on this iteration, because the if is now 0, checking for 0, we would exit this loop. Now, in the event we are done checking all of our receipts, we go to this batch function over here. This batch function sets the has receipt issues hidden field with the value from our process variable receipts have issues. This will be a 0 for no issues and a 1 for any issues in any of the receipts. We then detect If the receipt has issues, process variable is set to 1 here in this if statement. And if so, we branch back to the initiator to review the AI rejection reason and to allow them to augment their receipt. If no issue is present, we create a task for the finance human to review. If the finance human rejects, we loop back to the initiator and the process begins all over again. If finance does approve, we simply end. Okay, so let's run this example. We're going to submit 2 receipts, one with an issue on it and the other a regular old receipt. We won't provide descriptions for the receipts on first pass, as we'll see what the AI does. So let's take a quick look at the receipts. Again, just like the simple flow example, we're not scrutinizing items on the receipt that they're actually a valid company expense, as, well, we don't have a real company here. We're also not tabulating, so again, totals are irrelevant for this demo. So here's the first one. This one will have wine and craft beer. And the second is just a simple Walmart example. And again, it has baby carrots, French dressing. We're not scrutinizing any of these items for actually being valid for our particular fake company in this case. So here's the submission form. Let's submit those 2 receipts. First receipt I am submitting is a receipt that has alcohol on it. So let's choose that one. And remember, our AI task was told to reject receipts which are invalid or have alcohol on them. This particular receipt should be rejected. The second receipt, which I'll add here, is just the simple Walmart one. Nothing fancy on this one, and should be accepted by the AI prompt that we've put in place. So, a word of note before submitting this. Remember how in our workflow, we are looping by the number of receipts we've submitted? Well, in this case, our number of receipts is 2. However, you'll also recall that our composite field is indexed or referenced starting at 0. So the Walmart receipt is index 1, and our restaurant receipt is at index 0. Quickly going back to the workflow template, you can now see that we first set the number of receipts, in our example, to 2. Since that is greater than 0, we enter the loop. We then minus 1 off the number of receipts, making the value 1. We then look at the index number 1 of the composite field uploaded in the form and pull off the receipt description and image. We're counting down from 2 to 0 in this case, so the first receipt we look at will be the last one uploaded. In our example, that's the Walmart receipt. We go through this loop, and because the number of receipts at this point is 1, we re-enter the loop, minus 1 off of it, making the number of receipts variable equal to 0. Use 0 as the index to fetch the composite field at index 0, which in our case is a restaurant receipt with alcohol. And at this point, without a proper explanation, AI should kick us back out with an error. Since the number of receipts variable is 0 when we get back here, we exit the loop and carry on with the rest of the workflow in this direction. So now that all being said, let's run this thing. Alright, let's go back to our submission here. Here we are, and again, because we're not doing any tabulation, the expense total is largely irrelevant. Alright, so we've submitted our expense report, and the text that you see here, submitted your expense report to finance, again, I'll remind you, comes from the setup handler for Spawn Maestro workflow, and here it is. Submitted your expense report to finance. Good thing we didn't get an error. So, now that this is active, I will look at the all active Maestro workflow, and what we'll see here is we're at the start task for the complex receipt checking example. I'm going to trace this because this allows us to look at a number of things. First of all, the tasks that are active or have been completed in the engine, and all of our actual variables in the system. Currently right now, ignoring these top ones other than initiator, we know I'm the administrator, we have the workflow management mechanisms for setting stage counts, stage current counts, and the workflow messages. You can look at our documentation that explains that. But here's the important parts. The number of receipts currently is 0. We're going to set that, and hopefully it'll be number 2. The current receipt explanation are the 2 variables that we use to pick out the current receipt that we're passing through AI, and the current receipts explanation. And here's our flag if any of the receipts have issues during our AI check process, and here's the AI message that returns back to us. Down here are entity identifiers. Again, the unique ID is called submission when it comes from a web form submission. The entity type is web form submission, and entity bundle is Maestro AI Expense Receipt Complex example, and the entity ID number is 18. So again, this is how you can use your Maestro APIs. You can actually use the set process variable helper plugins to pick data out of these things very easily. All right, so I'm going to run the orchestrator a few times here. So I've just run it once. And so what should have happened is we should have completed the start task, and we're going to now set the number of uploaded receipts. And again, looking back at the complex example, this form, again, if I had 3, the number of receipts listed here would be 3. If I only had 2, it would be 2, so on and so forth. Okay. So let's look back at our trace and let's update it. And so what we should see here is we're about to execute that task to set the number of receipts. I will execute it. And what we should see down here is that the number of receipts is set to 2. That's good, because again, I uploaded our suspect restaurant receipt and a Walmart receipt, so that's 2. Going back to the template, we've completed this. We're now going to test to see if the receipt count is greater than 0. Because it's currently 2, we will go down into this direction. Okay, let's run our orchestrator. And what we will see is we're at the if task has been successfully completed, and the receipt count was obviously greater than 0, so now we're at the -1 and set the AI response to dash. So this 2 should go down to 1, and our AI response will be set to a dash. So let's run our orchestrator and refresh our page, and what we will see here is that the number of receipts has been lowered to 1, and our message is now a dash. The next thing we do is now set the current receipt explanation and the actual receipt image into the current receipt and current receipt explanation process variables. I'll run the orchestrator, refresh our page, and so now what we're doing is waiting for the finance AI review. We've got the current receipt. This is a file ID. Okay, so again, Maestro and the set process variable plugin helpers did all this for us, no coding required. And so right now we are waiting at the AI review. So let's take a quick peek at the template. This is where we are. We've come through here, we've set the number of receipts to 2. Is it greater than 2? Or greater than 0, pardon me, 2 is, yes. So we go in here, we -1 off, which becomes, the 2 becomes a 1. We set the AI response to a dash, and we pick off the current receipt explanation and the actual current receipt at index number 1. We then wait for all these to complete, and now we're here at the AI task. And so right now we are looking at the Walmart receipt, as that was the one at index, or the second one we submitted, and it's the index number 1. So let's run our orchestrator. Technically speaking, the Walmart example receipt is clean. It may contain items that might not be business worthy, however, we're not checking for that in this particular example. And so we have completed the Finance AI review. It has been successfully completed. The message coming back out of AI is a dash, so it's been cleared. So let's continue running the orchestrator. And what we'll do is we'll run the orchestrator around enough to get past this section here. We'll -1 off of it. We'll set it again, and we'll get back to the AI task. Let's see how that looks. So we'll run the orchestrator. There is no problem with this particular receipt. If the receipt count is greater than 0, it certainly is. We should be entering back into the loop once I run the orchestrator. And the orchestrator has run. We're going to -1 off of our receipt count, and we're going to set the AI response, even though it is already a dash, back to a dash, just to be sure. And now when we go in here, we are now waiting for the variable setup, which is our and task, and we're going to set the current receipt explanation and the actual receipt itself. So our current receipt is at 0. which means we're going to exit the loop the next time we hit that upper if. So at this point, we are now waiting at the AI task. We have a different receipt that we're looking at in the current receipt explanation. Again, I haven't explained why there's alcohol in this receipt. So if I run the orchestrator at this point, we'll give it a moment. And when I refresh this page, we will see that AI has come back and told us that the receipt contains alcohol, that I must confirm the approval or that it has client hospitality. Again, I didn't code this. This is all coming from the AI mechanism that we used in our workflow right here. We're going to go up into this direction and set a rejection reason back into our web form, into our custom composite form. We're going to set this field here, the rejection reason, to why it's been rejected. And then we will set the fact that we have an issue so that this if statement task allows us to reroute the web form task to the initiator to edit their tasks. So let's go to the task console, and I'll refresh this a few times. And what we should eventually see here is the web form task assigned back to the initiator. Here it is, issue with at least one of your receipts. So let's take a look at it. Here we now see the finance feedback field appears because, again, we've poked a value into has receipt issues. Because our composite field has the rejection reason being visible when our has receipt issues field is not empty, we show it. And so again, here as the end user, I can see why this particular receipt has been rejected. I'll say, okay, my manager approved this for customer appreciation. Okay, I will save this. And so what should happen at this point in time? If we look back at the completion of this task, we're going to reset the receipts have issues. It's going to be a 0, and we're going to repeat this process again. We're going to have 2 uploaded receipts. We're going to go through this entire process again. I'm going to speed this up because at this point AI, because we have a valid example or reason, pardon me, for the alcohol on our receipt, we should eventually get back down to this human finance task. Let's go back to our task console, and I'll run this a number of times. And eventually we get here to where we have the human finance review. So let's take a quick peek again. What's happened is the initiator has fixed their receipt. It has gone through this entire process yet again. Once for each receipt, AI has checked each receipt and compared the description or explanation for each receipt, and has said, sure, it looks good. We're now here at the human finance review. Now if we look at it, again, this is all out of the box. We're just looking at the submission. We're seeing what I said as an end user. My manager approved this because it has wine and craft beer on it. And here's my Walmart receipt. At this point again, I'm just going to accept this so that when we look back at our workflow, I've accepted this. We haven't rejected it, so it's not going to go back up this way. It's going to go back down here and end the process. And that is how this workflow works. Hopefully that was a good introduction to the Maestro AI Task, and in fact maybe some Maestro complex example workflow items that can help you in your day-to-day creation of workflow templates. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, please let us know, and do reach out to us at www.nextide.ca for any of your workflow needs. Thanks.